the blind and nearly blind here now.
It's not easy for Manchester United.
Not that you'd be a Manchester United
No,
supporter.
I'm definitely not anyway.
Richard, many thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Gerry. Great
Is
to be here.
this an area you know? Do you know the Downpatrick area at all?
No, I think I was down here once before, years ago, but
Never come back?
no, I was never invited back.
Can we start tonight talking about the time in your life when you had your sight, the first 10 years of your life? Tell me a little bit about that life growing up in Derry.
Well, I mean, I come from and grew up in the Craigan Estate in Derry, which, was one of the kind of social housing areas built just above the bogside. So Craigan was up on the hill overlooking the city. And, my memories of the childhood was very happy ones. Our house, there was 12 children in it. I was the second youngest. Both my parents my daddy was an unemployed shoemaker. My mum is what you described today as a homemaker. And, they have had a very happy, pleasant home life. And, back in those days, you didn't have football pitches or places to play, really. So you played in the street, played football in the street. There wasn't too many cars about, and things like that. So, and I was a football fanatic. I loved playing football. I would have kicked a Coke can around the street.
Did you say there were 12 in the family?
Yeah.
What size of a house did you have?
3-bedroom house. So all the boys were in one room. My mum and dad was in the other room, and then my 3 sisters were in the other room. So.
And where did you come in the 12?
I was second youngest.
Second youngest. So there was a heck of an age difference there between the eldest and the youngest.
I'm 60 now. My sister, who's the oldest, is 80. So
was
20 years.
That 20 years.
Aye.
So it was a happy childhood, close-knit family. You hadn't got much money. Nobody else had any money anyway, so you didn't know any difference whether you had money or not.
No, not you thought you were. We thought we were great. The house we had was lovely. We had a garden front and back, and my daddy took pride in the garden and all that sort of stuff. And we wanted for nothing really. And I suppose I was at an age where, being the second youngest, my older brothers and sisters were out working and handing in the house a bit,
Yeah.
And one of my brothers worked in a butcher, so we were never short of meat and chicken and stuff like that.
So it was a typical childhood growing up for the first 10 years.
Very happy-go-lucky.
Let's get to Thursday, the 4th of May, 1972.
Yeah.
Almost 50 years to the day.
50 years next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. I imagine it started out just like any other day.
It did. I mean, again, back in those days, you walked to school every day, and I come home for my lunch every day. Our school was, say, 6 or 7 minutes walk from the house, Rosemount Primary School, and not even that, a couple of minutes walk. And so I would go home. I would go down to school in the morning, and I remember the 4th of May being a lovely spring day, and I went to school in the morning. I came home at lunchtime, and my sister was getting married, and she had just bought a house in the Glen Road, which was just outside of Craigan there. And my older brother, who was just older than me, he was, say, 16 at the time, he was being kept off the afternoon off school to go and help in the house. My sister to clean the house, the new house or whatever. And I asked my mommy and daddy, could I stay off as well? But at 10 years of age, I wouldn't have much help, but I was still trying to get off school. And they says, no, you have to go back to school. So then that was it. I went back to school that day and got out about 3:20. And normally, you just followed the leader. There was a couple of ways you could head home and no real decision. You just followed the group, and we just ran out of the classroom, like all pent up energy, all the usual that youngsters do. And we ran up through the football pitch of the school. And you ran along the bottom of the football pitch to get out the gate that led onto the street. I just walked up to my house from there. And as there was a British Army lookout post positioned just almost as close as you are, Gerry, just at the edge of the school playground. And passed it day in and day out. It was wedged in between terrace houses, because the terrace houses backed onto the school as well. So you couldn't get in behind it, or you couldn't see inside it. It was a complete military installation, really. And a soldier fired a rubber bullet from in there as I ran past, and it hit me here in the bridge of the nose. I was 10 feet away, and I lost this eye and was permanently blinded in the left eye.
You had to go that way. There were other, but were you politically aware, because you knew there was trouble in Derry at the time? Bloody Sunday had happened just 3 months previous to this, had it not? And in fact, your mother's brother, Jared McKinney, was one of the victims of Bloody Sunday.
That's right. You know, I was very aware of the troubles. Like, you know, I wasn't aware of the politics, really, but I was aware of the troubles. I mean, Mommy and Daddy weren't politically sort of motivated or anything. You know, they were kind of, yeah, I couldn't have told you my daddy or Mommy's politics or anything. And but you know, Craigan was a no-go area at that stage. There were barricades at the end of each street. There was hijacked vehicles put across the road, all set on fire. Every day, every night, you would hear a bomb going off somewhere in the city centre, or you would see smoke bellowing up in the sky, and you'd be running from one end of the street because Craigan was up in the height. All you had to do was run down the street. You could look down over the bog side and see what was on fire. So you're very aware of the troubles. Plus the fact there was an army lookout post positioned at the bottom of your school.
But did your mum and dad never say, "Don't go that way, son. Come the long way home"?
No, not really, because you know it was you were in the school area. You were at the school playground.
Yeah.
Like you would have been out playing football in that pitch during the day, and hundreds of children ran home that way. Now there was about 5 different ways you could have went out, and there was no particular reason why you would go that way or you wouldn't go that way. It just depended on the crack with all the children that day. It was a more interesting way to go home because there was bankings up there, so when you're racing, you would up a bank and over, up another bank and over, you know, and so it was just a more sort of interesting way to run home. And that's the reality of it now.
But that day, but when the bullet was fired, were you taunting, were you shouting at the soldiers, were you messing about?
I'm not going to pretend like there would have been days you would have shouted, you know, "Get out Ireland," or, you know, "British this" or "British that," because that's what you heard the adults saying.
Yes.
But, you know, you never really, there was never any incidents that I saw at there. This was a school environment. It wasn't a pedestrian environment. You were in a school environment. The army lookout post was at the bottom of the school playground. It wasn't on a main thoroughfare, or the general public didn't come in there or anything.
Yeah. So it was all just children around at that stage?
Yes.
There's no adults there?
No, other than maybe a teacher or two.
That's all? And this bullet came firing out?
Well, I don't remember the bullet. I don't remember anything. What I remember is and running up, and we were having a race, and I wasn't in the front or wasn't at the back. I was somewhere in the middle, just racing up the field. And I remember just approaching the lookout post, and that's the next thing I remember after that is I woke up and I was lying on the school canteen table, and at that stage I couldn't see anything, but I knew it was on I was subsequently discovered that they had me lying on a table. And my music teacher, Mr. Giles Doherty, he heard the bang and he ran up and lifted me off the ground and took me in and laid me on the table.
He didn't actually recognise you?
No, my face was so badly busted open. My eyeballs were out of their sockets. My nose was completely flattened. And, it was just a bloody mess, really. And so he said to me, "What's your name, son?" And I said my name was Richard Moore. And he got a bit of a shock because I was in his music class. He knew me very well. But these bullets travel 100 miles an hour, and I was hit from 10 feet away. So I was lucky I survived, really.
How long were you in hospital?
2 weeks. First week I was in intensive care. Don't really remember that much, Gerry, about it. The second week I moved out of the general ward. And there was a wee boy from Oma, the bed opposite me, And as I said earlier, I was a football fanatic. So I remember joking with him and saying to him, "I can't wait to get these bandages on my eyes. Did I teach you how to play football?" And I often reflect on that, because for my parents or for my brothers and sisters that were constantly there, because of the seriousness of the thing, they never really left the hospital. And, they must have been wondering how they were going to break the news to me that I was never going to play football again.
It must have been horrendous for your mother because they say her brother was killed 3 months beforehand, and now you're lying in intensive care in Altnagelvin.
Aye, I think it was. I mean, I can remember. I remember when when I got out of hospital. You know, my mommy and daddy were two very religious people. They, went to mass every day of their lives, and my mommy, they had great faith. So my mommy used to come up and kneel beside my bed at night when I got out of hospital, and she thought I was sleeping, and she would start to say her prayers, and then she would break down and start to cry, and the crying would get out of control, and then she was saying things like, "Look at him, God, he's only a 10-year-old boy. Please give him back his eyesight." And she'd be pleading with God really to perform a miracle. And then I pretend to wake up and she'd pull herself together, So I'm convinced my mommy had a mental breakdown. But it was never properly diagnosed, but yeah. I think she had.
When and who told you, Richard, you have lost your eyesight and it's a permanent, you will never regain your eyesight?
Well, my brother Noel took me for a walk. We had a wee backyard in there with a path, the clothesline and all that, and they were sort of taking me for short walks every day to help build up my strength. And this particular day, about a month after I was shot, so I was out of hospital 2 weeks at that stage, my brother Noel was walking with me, and he said to me, "Look, Richard, do you know what has happened?" I says, "I knew I was shot." And he said, "Do you know what damage was done?" And I said, "No," and that's when he told me that I will be blind for the rest of my life.
How did the 10-year-old react to that? Did it mean anything? Did you realise the fullness of that?
No, I don't think it did. I mean, I accepted it literally there and then. He may as well told me Derry City lost a match that night, and I just literally took it in my stride. I'm not a Manchester United supporter either, sorry, Jerry. But I mean, it was only that night when I went to bed that I cried about being blind. And, I cried because I knew I was never going to see my mommy and daddy again. And, to a 10-year-old boy, you don't think about the bigger things in life. You don't think about getting a job. You don't think about your education. You don't think about even how you're going to cope or what blindness means for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I just had this enormous sense of loss. I'm never going to see my mommy and daddy's faces again. And I cried myself to sleep that night. But then the next day I woke up and got out of bed, and I suppose I put the piece of my life back together, and that was it.
How did you cope in those early days?
I think that a number of things was important. I did struggle with blindness, the physical side of blindness. Everybody had to get used to me being blind. I had to get used to me being blind. For example, big house, shoes were, brothers were throwing their shoes all over the bedroom or whatever. So you're tripping over a shoe or a half open door, you're walking into it, or things like that. And then, so they all had to get used to sort of clear Richard's flight path, and then make sure that that they were sensitive to my needs. And for me, it was like learning to walk again. Yeah. It was like getting used to environments. I had a fear of open spaces, for example, and because I couldn't orientate myself. Like there was a time when you wouldn't have got me into a hall like this.
Really?
Because too big. I just would have had no sense of top or bottom or left or right or whatever. It was like in a dark abyss. And I just, it took me a while to develop all the skills that would help me do that, really.
What sense do you have now? Can you see anything?
No. Blind as a bat.
So how do you make up for that?
There's different people have different experiences of blindness. I suppose I've met people who feel that blindness is like, for them, is like pulling a bag over their head and it's just blackness. But that's not what it's like for me at all. I see everything in my mind's eye. I see everything.
Is that because you could see for the first 10 years?
I think so. I don't know, but I think so. So when I'm sitting in this room, I hear the echo in the room. I hear all the people down there, you know, responding. I hear you sitting there. I'm aware of the chair I'm sitting on, the floor below me. And all of that creates a picture in my mind. So somebody down there, as much as clicks a pen, I'll see that pen. If somebody,
Right.
you know, sometimes you're in a school talking and a youngster's unwrapping a sweet, you know, I can see the sweet.
Yes, yes.
Do you know?
Yes, yes.
So all them things create
Yes.
pictures in my mind.
Yeah. Children can be very cruel. How did your schoolmates react to you when you went back to school blind?
Aye, well, no, but my mates were great. You know, I always say, like, this is tongue in cheek, like I always say, like, if you're a young Catholic from Derry and you're meant to lose your eyesight, there's no better way to lose it than shop at the Brits. because because overnight you're a hero. And everybody wanted to meet me. My friends were just delighted to be associated with me. That lasted 6 months, maybe. But you know, so they were. You know, when I look back on it, it was incredible. You know that schools weren't equipped for a blind child back in those days. It wasn't the norm for a child like me to go to the normal school, let's say. But they all made a special effort, and I just think they wanted to make sure. It was all, they rallied around me and they wanted to make sure that I was at no disadvantage.
How did you learn?
Well, I was very lucky, you know. There was a woman, Mary Donnelly, who was a teacher up in the girls' school in the Craigan, and she lived at Westway, which is just around the corner from our house. So I went up to her school 2 days a week, and she came to my house on a Saturday and taught me to type. So I learned how to type.
Right.
Then there was a woman, who was a social worker assigned to me, who happened to be a woman that worked in a school for the blind in England at one time, and she taught me how to read Braille. And then I just used a tape recorder in the classroom.
Okay.
So I taped the lessons, Braille to cassettes, and typed all my essays. And that's how I got through university and everything.
Wow, wow, wow. Were there ever attempts to get the eyesight back?
No, never attempts really. No, there was no, as a man says, it was a done deal really, but you know, there was no chance of me getting my eyesight back. Now, I did take part in a documentary back in 2005 where they flew me over to America and I went to see these eye specialists. That there's no natural way that I'll get my eyesight back. Yeah. You know, that eye's gone and that eye's knackered. That eye they would have taken it away at the time. Only my
What's the
mammy.
difference between gone and knackered?
Well, well, I still have that one. I don't have an eye there at all.
Right,
That's an artificial eye.
Oh, that's gone.
It's gone.
And
That's
the other
an
one's
artificial.
knackered. I got
and
you
the other
now.
one's
Yeah.
bit now. And they should have took that eye away at the time as well, but my mammy wouldn't let them. She said, "Look, my mammy, again, you know, the faith clicks in." And my mammy thought, as long as he has an eye, there's a chance he'll get his eyesight back. And but other than that, it's not work. It's not going to work. So the only way they could do it is by connecting some kind of a camera to my brain. And believe it or not, that technology is available. It's when I went to see this crowd took me out to America, and I went to Los Angeles, went to Salt Lake City, and went to up to Canada. A guy that actually had it done. And it was very primitive then, but at least it was proven that you can connect a computer and a camera to the brain, and it will create some sort of sense of light and images. But the guy that I met was a guy called Jens up in Canada. He spoke 8 languages. He was a brilliant pianist, but he just could not cope with blindness. And I actually felt enormously sorry for him when I left him. Because, you know, blindness isn't that bad, Gerry. You know, you can live with blindness, like. And, you know, it has its occupational hazards. It has its challenges. But it also has a lot of positive things about it. And there's other elements of your life. Like, the sad thing about me was not being able to see my children.
Yes.
And that is sad, and I'll always miss that. You know, Enya got married a couple of years ago, and, you know, I had to walk her up the aisle, and I missed the fact that I couldn't see her. But on the other hand, I was able to sit and watch a Disney movie with them. I'm able to tickle them. I was able to go out the yard and kick a football. I was able to take them for a walk or taught them how to ride a 2-wheel bike. No, I was able to tell them stories at night. So you can focus focus on all this stuff that is negative about blindness, and it is a reality, and you shouldn't shy away from it. But there's so many other things you can do as well. So, I don't know what question you asked me now, I can't remember. Sorry.
If I said to you today, there is a chance we could get the eyesight back, would you jump at it, or would you say, no, I'm okay?
I would be cautious about it, but I would look, it's like asking everybody down there, would they like to win the lotto? Everybody would like to win the lotto, I think. But it's not the be all and end all. I would like to get my eyesight back. I would give my right arm to have my eyesight back. But at what cost? And if I had to give up the incredible life I've had, the experiences that I've had, I wouldn't want my eyesight back.
Any young man in that position that you were in, and living in Derry, and then throughout the 70s and 80s, you must have been very bitter as to what happened to you.
No, I never had any bitterness at all, never. And I think I came from my mommy and daddy. They never had any bitterness. They were hurt, they were broken-hearted, but they were never bitter. I remember, and bearing in mind my mommy's brother shot dead on Bloody Sunday, and then, basically 3 months later, I was blinded. And all at the hands of the British Army. And I remember sitting in our living room, a small house in Craigan, and I was sitting in the living room, and my mommy always spent her days in the kitchen. And my brother who was out the kitchenware, and he was having a real go at her. And in very colourful language, he was saying things there like, they murdered my Uncle Gerard. They blinded Richard. It's time to get our own back. And my mommy says to him, if you want to help Richard, go on there and help Richard. But you're not helping Richard by hurting somebody else. And that's what prevailed over me, I think. So I never had a moment's anger or a moment's bitterness.
Even as a young teenager at university?
No, not at all. I mean, I never thought about blindness at university, Gerry. I genuinely didn't. I was a happy-go-lucky teenager, young adult, going to university, having a ball. And I played in a band, I played the guitar, I was, I run a folk group, I'd sing at mass, all that sort of stuff. I was loving life, and I never thought about blindness in a negative sense at all.
And you never thought of vengeance either?
Oh no, not at all, never. Never.
Were you ever asked?
Asked.
To join up, or?
I don't think I'd be much use joining up, Gerry, now. Couldn't resist that. Jesus Christ. Hey? Sorry. You want to hand me a gun? The brothers wouldn't let me wear a plug. No, I mean, I think people would have used me if they had got the chance.
Yes, PR, that's what
I think, I know what you're getting at there, but I never really got that way involved or anything like that there, so I never really supported violence. I find it hard being at the receiving end of a bullet to justify the use of a bullet on the other direction, so.
Fair comment. Can I ask, did you get compensation?
I did, I got £68,000.
In what year?
Well, I got it in 1978, or no, maybe not, maybe, well, it's 18, what would that be? 61, about 1979.
78, 79.
Aye.
And was that adequate? Did that appease you? Did that mean anything to you?
At the time, I can remember the debate in our house. And again, my daddy was a simple man, and he was feeling the pressure of the campo for me. And the British were making offers, and I was 15 when all the offers were starting, and I wasn't really that much help in a way, but originally they offered maybe 50,000, and then it was up to 60,000. And my brother, one of my older brothers, says to me one day, he took me aside and he says, Richard, look, my daddy's struggling to make a decision. They want to settle out of court. They don't want to put you through a court case, because if they put you on the stand, it might be difficult for you.
Yeah.
And I'd never been in a courtroom in my life, and neither any of our crowd, so it was daunting, the thought of it. And I just said to my brother that night, he says, my daddy would like you to have some view on it, it would help him. So I said, look, tell him I'll take the 60,000 and I'll settle for that. So he went back and told me daddy that Richard's happy to settle for the 60 grand. And, you know, whatever happens after that. So they obviously, lawyers knowing that I would settle for that. You know, we got it up to 68,000.
That was a fortune then, Richard, wasn't it?
No, well, what happens is then you lose everything else you're entitled to. You know, I discovered that, like university, all my friends were getting a full university grant. You got a full university grant in those days. Right. I got nothing.
Because of the compensation?
Because of the compensation. If I wanted to, say, sign on the brew or anything, I wasn't allowed to do that. So whatever money I had to use it wisely. I gave my mommy and daddy some money, and, you know, that was it.
Things still upset you, Richard. You know, we're talking 50 years ago here. I've never seen you as emotional as I have this past couple of months.
Aye, well, that's true, and I even wonder what that's about. I think the older you get, the more you I think about my parents, think about what they went through. You become a parent, and there's also a realization in the last while that I'm probably never going to see again. And as much as I knew that, you know, when you at 60 years of age, you know that it's definitely not going to change. So he might have, without even realising it, had a bit of hope that would happen. And I used to always think of myself as a sighted person that lost his eyesight. And I suppose it just dawned on me in the last couple of years that I'm actually a blind person that used to be able to see. And that is different. Now, you know, it depends what I talk about, you know. When I talk about my mum and my daddy, I find that difficult. Yeah, yeah. When I talk about my children, not seeing them, I find that difficult. And, you know, but, you know, when I'm just getting on with my life, I don't be emotional really, you know.
Give us a wee bit of light relief. Tell me about the night that you were going out and you asked your daughter what tie you should wear with the suit.
Aye. There was nobody in our house and I had to go to a function and I had to wear a tie. And there was nobody in the house, so I went home about 6 or half 6 to get ready. And I was going, jeebers, what colour of tie am I going to wear? I didn't know the colour or anything, so I don't know where one of my daughters was, and the wife was out somewhere, so I had a daughter over in Scotland at university, yeah. So I laid out 3 ties on the bed, you know, and decided, I know what I'll do, I'll FaceTime her. And she'll see the ties and tell me which one, no, 1, 2 or 3, so it was great. So I FaceTime her and I says, Enya, I want you to look at these ties and tell me which one I should wear the night. And she says, Daddy, you better switch on the light. Oh dear. Some crack.
Your wife and the 2 girls, they have been your rock throughout all the 70.
Aye, they have surely. I mean, I'm very lucky to have the people in my life that I have. Yeah. You know.
I want to move the story on some 33 years to the 14th of January 2006. You had decided in your own mind that you wanted to meet the soldier that shot that bullet.
Aye, I mean...
why, Richard? Why?
Well, you see, you know, like there's a lot of people involved in my incident, obviously, my mum and my daddy and brothers and sisters and, you know, and all that. But ultimately, when you peel everything back, the most significant thing that happened to me in my life, the life that I've had, the trajectory I'm on, the decisions I've made, the challenges I've had, have all been dictated by my blindness. And when you peel everything back, there's only 2 people involved in that. And that's me and the man that fired the rubber bullet. So I've sort of felt that I was in a relationship with somebody that I didn't know. somebody played such a significant part in my life, and I don't know who they are. So I kind of, to me it was like looking into a shadow, and there was somebody there, but you didn't know anything about them. The soldier, you didn't know who the soldier was. I knew nothing about the soldier whatsoever. Just knew the regiment that he was in, but that's all. So, and as well as that, I remember walking down past Rosemount Police Barracks. I remember walking around the Craig and thinking, I wonder if that soldier in there, the boy chatting me, or I wonder, is he passing me now in his Land Rover or whatever. Just curious, And then as I got older, I began to think, I wonder, does he know that I actually forgive him?
Did you use those words in your own mind? I want to forgive this man.
I never made a decision to forgive the soldier. I just forgave him. But I never woke up one day and said, I forgive him. I wouldn't have talked about my story in the context of forgiveness until after I heard the Dalai Lama speak, to be honest. When he was in Derry in 2000, I heard him speak about forgiveness and describing forgiveness. And I began to realise that's what I'm experiencing. I've experienced forgiveness all my life. I never had any anger. I genuinely had no anger towards the army or anything like that. And so, I just wondered, like I was all my life, and as you get older, your 20s and all that, where you begin to think about the soldier, you begin to think about who is he, what is he doing, does he ever think about me, does he know that I've gone on so well with my life? I hope he's not a gibbering wreck. I hope he's not somebody that's beating himself up over what happened to me or anything like that there. And I'm just curious to meet him. I would love to meet the man that played so much a part in my life.
You eventually tracked him down.
Aye.
And you decided that both of you contacted him. You wrote to him.
I wrote a letter to him, and it was hand delivered to him. And then he wrote back to me.
And you met in Edinburgh.
We met in a hotel foyer just in Edinburgh at the airport there.
What were the first words spoken? Do you remember?
I remember sitting there, and I was there 2 hours early, and it was a very quiet lounge, and there was 2 steps over there, 2 or 3 steps, and I heard somebody coming up the steps and walked over towards me and put his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Hello, Richard, it's Charles." And I stood up and we shook hands and sat down. It was very nerve-wracking. I always say it was like being on a first date. Nerve-wracking. And then, I had in my pocket, I had a photograph of my parents and I had a photograph of my family. And should I never left them out, I wanted them there just to be there because I travelled on my own over to Scotland. And that's the way I wanted it. And then, I brought over Children in Crossfire brochures and that. I was thinking I might get them to sign a direct debit or something. And, I had all that stuff. I didn't want the meeting to end quickly. So I brought things that maybe we could chat about as well. And they could get us over that initial nerves. And then most serious sort of beginning of the conversation, I said, "Look, Charles, I want you to know that I'm not here to be confrontational. I'm not here to make you accountable to me. I am here to let you know that I forgive you. I've always forgiven you. I have no hatred towards you, and I never had." And that's exactly what I said. And Charles said, "Thank me for that." And he said, "Look, Richard, I just want you to know that with the benefit of hindsight, I regret ever firing a rubber bullet."
Well, at the moment, and hopefully on Zoom from his home in England, we have Charles. Good afternoon, Charles. Can you hear us? We're trying to get Charles. He's come up behind me. I'm looking at him down here.
It's like the Oscars, isn't it?
Hello?
Hello, Charles.
Yeah.
Good. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can now. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've heard nothing since the last 45 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you what's been happening. Richard has been giving us an account of what happened on the 4th of May in 1972. What are your memories and thoughts of that day?
Basically, it's we're now talking about something sort of now nearly 50. Well, it is 50 years ago, and my predominant thought was as soon as I found out what had happened to Richard as a result of my firing the bullet, I was in a terrible state, shock and horror, felt absolutely dreadful, and the whole purpose of what I was doing was merely to try and get a group of youths that had been or were causing problems, a group of youths, I'm not quite sure how many, been throwing stones. Somebody had got hold earlier on of a scaffolding pole and had shoved it through one of the observation slots of the little watch places, the lookout places we had, and was trying to transfix the soldier inside. And to try and eventually get them to go away, as happened many, many times in Ireland at that stage. I decided, and I fired a rubber bullet with the view of merely trying to get them to go away. Very tragically and very sadly, it hit Richard, and when I found out that the injuries that had occurred to him, I was absolutely devastated, So those are my feelings on the day.
Richard was only 12 feet away from you, roughly at the time.
Sorry?
Richard was only 12 feet away from you at the time.
Yeah, I can't, to be honest, I cannot remember at all exactly how far. I mean, as far as they were all running about. How far away from me he was, I can quite honestly say I really know. I have no recollection.
Did you feel justified in firing a rubber bullet at young people who were?
I felt justified insofar that our aim was to get these people to go away. And we had fired thousands and thousands of rubber bullets over this particular period. 1972 was sadly one of the most tragic years in the whole Troubles in Northern Ireland. The level of violence was horrific, and we had incidences of stone throwing, bottles, stones, whatever, on a daily basis. And the vast majority of times we fired rubber bullets, people went away, basically with bruises and not much else. There were the very rare occasion when somebody was injured, and I believe of the thousands and thousands of these things we fired, I think there was a couple of cases where the people had been killed, but that was certainly the exception, and it was the only means we had. If they didn't go away, it was the only possible course we had was to use the rubber bullet gun. There was nothing else.
How did you feel, Charles, when you learned that you had hit a 10-year-old child and blinded him for life?
Correct, that is absolutely correct, I did. And that is to say why I felt so devastated and so traumatized when I found out what had happened.
When you got Richard's letter, how did you feel? Did you immediately want to meet him, or did you have to have a long thought about it?
No, basically the background to that was I went on soldiering. The sadness, the feeling of shock and horror of what I did, that obviously went, but I felt great sadness and great regret for years and years and years. And it was many, many years later, through the help of a policeman who rang me and then came to see me, a retired policeman, with Richard's letter. And I read his letter, and I can say without any question it was the most superb letter I've ever received in my life. There was no bitterness, there was no animosity towards me in any shape, form or size. And basically what Richard wanted to do was he hoped in the letter that we could communicate and perhaps we could meet. And I thought it was absolutely superb.
What did you want to get out of the meeting? Did you want forgiveness?
No, not really. All I wanted to do was to meet this individual who, through what I had read in the letter, I thought was absolutely fantastic. And where it was going to go, I had no idea. I merely wanted to meet him and see what would come out of it. That is all. I had no particular pre-feeling about it at all. I just would be absolutely delighted to meet him.
Were you surprised when Richard said that he did forgive you?
Yes, I was. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, well, I was surprised. Yeah.
So you obviously held a lot of blame over those years.
He sorry.
You obviously held a lot of blame within yourself over those years.
No, well, what I felt was that the action that I had taken, I felt was justified, the result of which was horrific. And I felt great sadness and regret for that, and that remained with me. And that was a feeling. And you can read into that whatever you wish, but that was my feeling.
When you met Richard, you saw him face to face, and I'm sure you've heard then and still today the great work that Richard has been done. What do you think of Richard Muir now as a young man? Well, he's not that young, he's 60.
I think you need to go and get your eyes tested.
But he is a remarkable man, is he not?
He is I would say, he comes in a category of being probably my greatest friend. And when I die, he is one of two people who's going to speak at my funeral.
Charles, we appreciate you taking your time to be with us tonight. Thank you so much indeed. Richard, do you want to say anything before Charles goes?
I thank you, Charles. I always think that whatever we may feel, it takes a brave person to come on and talk like this. So, and anything I've asked Charles to do, he's always agreed to do it. And I do consider Charles one of my close friends.
Thank you very much.
Charles, thank you very much indeed. Good night to you. Good night to Charles.
Okay.
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
You were messing about.
What do you mean?
You were throwing stones.
Oh, wasn't?
Can you say?
I think you should list them all over again. No, it's a very interesting, what I learned about reconciliation is you have to create the space for people to be who they want to be, and their story is as important to them as my story is for me.
Yeah.
And I'm very strong about the fact there were no rioting when I was at that singer, but I would not put it past young people running past to throw bricks at it. I wouldn't put it past them. And that's where you get into the debate around, was it a riot, was it not? Was it all the things that Charles just described? It wasn't like that when I was there, but I have to allow for the fact that Charles felt something was happening that day, but nobody else did.
Yeah. What did you get out of the meeting with him?
It's one thing to forgive somebody, it's another thing to be able to tell them. And that was one of the things I got out of it. The other thing is, sometimes good people do bad things. And unfortunately, we live in Northern Ireland, or fortunately, we live in Northern Ireland, or whatever way slant you want to put on it, where people got involved in things that in a normal society they may not have got involved in. Now, and I just want to put the caveat on here that, it's a personal view of mine, and I understand. I don't know where everybody's coming from in the audience here, and I understand everybody has different challenges. But for me, I think that we're all lucky if we get through our life without doing something that we'd have to regret for the rest of our lives. I think Charles has done something that he regrets. He's coped with it quite well, which I'm glad about. But it doesn't make him a bad person.
Yeah.
But what he did was bad.
What a heart, Richard. You have a lot of admirers around the world. You've met popes, you've met presidents, you've met the Dalai Lama. You're now the Derry Lama.
I know.
How did you get to the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama?
How did I get it? Well, that event in 2000, I was in the audience and in Derry, and the Dalai Lama told me forgiveness, and I put my hand up to say, look, Your Holiness, I just want to let you know that, what you have described is how I'm feeling. And there was a wee bit of a back and forward between me and him just for a minute or two there, And then I don't know what happened after that, but it was arranged for me to go and have my lunch beside him at the event. And at that, he began to ask me more about my story and all that. And then he invited me out to India to speak to the Tibetan community out there. And then when I met Charles, when I found out Charles's name and I was going to meet Charles, it was also Children in Crossfire's 10th anniversary. And I sent a letter out to the Dalai Lama to say, I was just encouraged by others to do this, and to say, look, I've found out the soldier's name, and I'm going to meet him sometime soon. I just wanted to let you know that. And by the way, Children of Crossfire are celebrating their 10th anniversary. And would you be willing to be the keynote speaker at a conference at Derry? And within 10 days, I got a fax back to say yes, he would come. And then that's how I developed a friendship with him then.
Well, I'll tell you some friendship, because in your book he wrote, I consider Richard not only my friend, but my hero. Why? Because while I talk about forgiveness, Richard Moore lives it. That's a fair comment, isn't it?
Oh, well, I wouldn't argue with him, like.
Well, I know someone who might argue with you, because he's a very good friend of yours.
Oh, here we go.
Can we get another chair up there, Connor, please? Oh, there's one over there. Bring that chair up. Make sure it's a big one, will you?
I was going to bring get the big one, you expect you get.
It's not Ray McFettridge, it is John Lennon. John Lennon, come on out.
We went around here a wee bit.
You alright?
Say 1, 2.
1, 2. Is that working?
No.
Oh, my foot.
I don't think it's working.
Is it working?
Mine's not working. I pushed this off hours ago. Yeah, it's me.
You're definitely working.
John, it must be great. It must be great,
What,
John.
Gerry?
I say it must be. It must be great to get out on your own without that woman following you around everywhere. Your woman McFettridge, yeah.
No,
Is she not?
it'll change. What was it like?
Right. Tell me how you met Richard. First time meeting Richard.
First time I met Richard was a girl who's now on the board as well. That what do you call it? I keep forgetting her name. Maureen.
Morning.
Maureen
Lindbergh.
Lindbergh. It's not her my name.
Delaney.
Delaney is. You got your hair.
It's like taking your granny out.
I was going to say a sniper one and kick me. So Maureen says I'd like you to meet a fella. He does a bit of charity work, and he says he's a friend of mine. I says, what kind of a friend is he? Like close to you? Is he that type of friend? He says he's blind. I says, oh, probably about right. So we met in the Elbow Rooms. Wasn't it the Elbow Rooms up in Dublin Road?
Aye, somewhere to go.
So he said, John, how are you? He said, Richard, yes. And talking to him, and after about 10 minutes, he said, the character you do is just so funny. I think it's the funniest thing. Now, I have a gig that I want you to do up in Derry. Or not in Derry, I don't know who's it. And I said, when? He says, it's in 2 weeks' time. I says, that's a bit quick, isn't it? You know, hello, how are you? Can you do a gig 2 weeks? Didn't I tell you I wasn't on? You clapping to it's you, the fat one. You. So he asked me up to Derry to do a gig, and I did it, and he was delighted. He says, I have to give you any money. I said, no, sure, I drive up to Derry, petrol's nothing, and my time's nothing, and no, seriously. He asked me up, and I did the gig, and from that day on, you know.
This was a gig for Children in Crossfire,
Children
obviously.
Crossfire, obviously. And but he was just the type of fella that you can't say no to.
No.
He's just and I've been in Africa with him 5 or 6 times now, Richard.
That's right.
And the people in Africa, you know, you don't have to go to the Dalai Lama or anything. There are people, they wanted to give him, the people in Africa wanted to give him their eyes.
Yeah.
One woman. And he's talking about him getting, I'm older than Richard just by a year or two. Gerry, 70. Who brought the phone in?
What's the Dalai Lama?
That's charged. I want to know where he lives. Anyway.
He's looking for a scaffolding pole.
He looked at the scaffolding pole you put in. And I know what it's like because the maid, Richard, asked me would I be the ambassador for Ireland for Children in Crossfire. And I said, yes, I would be delighted to be. I felt honoured. And we were at the City Hall a few weeks back, and Richard got up to say a few words, and he says, well, you know, John Lennon, he's going to be our ambassador, and then he got all emotional. And I'd never seen Richard get emotional. But I was delighted because I brought tears to a glass eye. He cursed there, I heard it.
I didn't catch the bugger.
You should have said.
I thought that.
Tell me that. Richard, tell us more about Children Crossfire, because we've mentioned it all along. You set this up in when?
1996, 25 years ago now, roughly. And, I set it up. I would say I set Children Crossfire up in response to my own sort of situation. I realised that the reason why I survived blindness, the reason why I had such a positive life, was because of people, and because of support, and because of opportunity. I was able to go back to school, get an education for myself, and make a life for myself, even as a blind person. So all I ever wanted to do was give some of that back, really. And so I set up Children in Crossfire in 1996. I hadn't got a clue about running a charity, to be honest. I was a publican. I had owned 2 pubs at that stage, and I was running my own business. And I just decided to take the plunge and go and do it. So over those 25 years, we've probably raised somewhere in the region of about 50 million. And, you know...
50 million?
Roughly about that, I would say, at least.
Wow.
You know.
Why did you choose a charity in Africa? Why not like a local charity?
Look, you have to go where your heart is, and you have to go where you're motivated. And at that stage, I've been taking part in the Great Famine walks down around Mayo, and it was organised by an Irish charity called AFRI. And there was these speakers coming from all over the world talking about the challenges that children were facing in other parts of the world. And then I done a walk in Mississippi to raise money for that charity back in '92. And during that walk, there was a priest called Father Pat Clark who lived in the Amazon with Brazilian Indians. And he talked about the poverty. And then there was a nun called Sister Rebecca who worked in the slums of San Paulo. And for 2 weeks, I listened to their stories and listened to what they talked about. And I just felt at that time, first of all, how lucky I was. Secondly, that I could be a voice for children that can't speak for themselves. And that I could use my experience and my story in a positive way to maybe help children in other parts of the world that hadn't got food in their stomach, that hadn't got access to clean water, and who were being mentally and physically abused every single day of their lives.
Yeah.
So that was where my heart went. Really.
Yeah. And John, you've been out. There's photographs going up. You've been out. I remember first time going to the Sudan when I saw starving children. It's an image that never leaves you.
Absolutely. I think the first place we went to was Malawi, wasn't it?
That's right, Malawi, yeah.
And I was with a wee boxer from the Irish News, wee photographer, Hugh Russell. He was a Commonwealth champion, and he was an Olympian. And Hugh he gave them their boots. He left one pair of shoes, and he gave everything else away. and he went back home with was a pair of jeans and a shirt.
Yeah.
He gave his watch,
Everything.
he gave everything away, and I tried my hardest to give them my stuff, but I knew I was coming back out again. You know what I mean? Oh, some wee lad, maybe 18 years of age. Look at that lad. Your watch. No, seriously. It's hard to be serious, isn't it? You enjoying this? Want to send a message to your face? So,
Tell me this, we're coming to the end. You've been a friend of Richard's for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
How would you sum him up?
He's just sort of most kindest. Never thinks of himself. He always thinks of everybody. I hope you're writing this down. No, seriously, he all he thinks about is people who have nothing, and if we can do anything for them. And I remember the first time that we did a big golf day, or we did something for children in Crossfire, and he says, I think we could make 100,000 here. He says, look, if we can make £500,000, the Irish government will give, wasn't it another £500,000?
Yeah.
And we ended up, I think the first year, making 1.2 million from Children Crossfire for kids all over the world.
That's through the Irish News Appeal.
The Irish News Appeal.
What a vision for a man who can't see. Eh?
Yeah.
Richard, looking back on it all now, how would you assess it? Losing your eyes, losing your sight, is it a blessing or a curse?
I wouldn't describe it as a curse. I think that in many ways I have been blessed, and you just said something there. Like my mammy would have prayed that I got my eyesight back, but I think her prayers were answered in a way that she never would have imagined. And you're given a vision or whatever it might be, and I think that if somebody had said to my mammy or daddy back in 1972, someday Richard will be sitting with me and my Federates on a stage in Downpatrick talking about the time, they would have said, you off your box, But there we are, we're here and we're doing it. And, I've been on the receiving. What's great about blindness, Gerry? I meet people in a different way from you'll meet people. I rely on the generosity and kindness of people every single day of their lives. Today, I got on the train in Derry. I had to be taken on the train. I had to be taken off the train. I had to be put into a taxi. I went to somewhere else in Belfast, and then John drives down and he picks me up. And we come down here to Downpatrick, we meet Greg McLaughlin and the family there. And, and we're here now with everybody. Every stage of that journey, I relied on people's help. And I've always got the support and help of people like John, like Greg, like Gerry Kelly, others down there, yourself. Always wanting to help me. And I love that. I love that. Because sometimes when you ask for help, people think it's a weakness. And I actually think it's a strength.
I must tell you, Gerry, something that Richard said to me once about vision, seeing. He says there's people who will go from here, say across country way to Derry, and you can go into one village and you can automatically, before you even talk to anybody in the village, see the colours and decide, do you like it, do you not like it? You haven't seen anybody, you haven't talked to anybody, but you look at the colours, the curbs. You go to the next village, well, it's not too bad. He says, vision does that for you before you meet anybody. So he says, until I meet them and they talk to me, then I make up my own mind.
That's probably the best way. It's probably the very best way. Richard, you talked about people helping you. You have helped literally hundreds of thousands of young children around the world. Thank you for your time tonight. You're one of the most inspirational people that I have ever met.
Well, thank you, Gerry.
Put your hands together, please, for the marvelous Richard Moore.
All right. Oh, thank you.
Right.
Richard, you're getting a standing ovation. You're getting a standing ovation.
The front row's not starting.
The chance to go. Trouble.
That's not.
Richard got a standing, John, you got a sitting
I
ovation.
did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I offended anybody from the bottom of my heart,
Richard, I'll see you down there. Watch the steps.